Hello, this is Vinicius chatting today here from Startsea in Palo Alto, California. Very, very important topic, AI, but what is specifically? Security, cybersecurity. There's been a lot of buzz around the topic, and I haven't seen a lot of people discussing the importance of security as companies more and more think about ways to quickly adopt this technology in everything they do, from product to services and customer support and experience. It's a very important thing in the agenda of every CXO or every leader who is really committed to make a difference. And we chose two particular players in the industry: ChatGPT, owned by OpenAI, and IBM Watson, to bring some clarity around what elements of security should we first think about. And then comparing both, it's going to be very clear why security matters and what positions, especially large enterprise and corporations, should think or take if they haven't taken yet in terms of how to actually protect their business and brand. Now, let's start talking about ChatGPT. One of the important things to notice here is it's a very powerful thing. I don't think we've seen such a massive amount of buzz with the technology coming to market since, I think, the early days of internet, where the initial applications started to pop. Sundar Pichai, who is Google CEO, he recently mentioned that AI is or can be bigger than the internet itself. Now, what ChatGPT has done extremely well is the following, right? So create a consumer version of what AI is and how people can actually control the input and define somewhat the output for whatever task or mission they want using AI. Before ChatGPT, AI was pretty much a technology discussed, worked, and employed somewhat behind the scenes in the corporate space, predominantly as a B2B play. Consumers could actually experience and face some of the outputs of what companies were actually doing with AI. For example, your choices at Amazon, and Amazon displays, oh, customers who bought this actually also bought that, personalizing offer, giving you your best and favorite choices when you're watching your movies on Netflix. These are all possible solutions and experiences that were created on the back of AI. Now, what Sam Altman did with his extensive background from NYC, backing up a lot of very consumer-centric companies, he was able to consumerize that, and ChatGPT became accessible to everyone. And with that massive wave, everybody talking about that, literally the agenda became a way more important. Now, important to also say, many technology players were already working on that as well and providing AI as I'd say, in a box solution for many B2B players. And one of them is IBM. Actually, IBM started their initial, I'd say, product in the B2B space, I think, more than a decade ago. And Watson was actually rebranded a few years later and became the de facto AI solution. A lot of focus on analytics in the beginning, which is one of the fields of AI. But IBM was likely the pioneer in the B2B space among all the IT providers. Now, what is ChatGPT very good for? Number one, I think it's a very good capability for consumers. Like if you go on the web, if you go on your app store and download, it's very good for human productivity. You as a person in your own business. Now, is it a good thing for a company or large enterprises? It's questionable. And why? Although ChatGPT can do beautiful things and a myriad of actually work and tasks for you, from writing a book to writing articles to running massive data sets and bringing in, I'd say, information outputs, to helping you, I'd say, solve coding problems and teach you so many things, it's not something that is very conducive to security and data privacy. Why? If you think about, what ChatGPT and OpenAI, they actually display and say when you sign up and say, look, your data is going to be used to train our models, right? Think about like ChatGPT is these large language models, and the gasoline for that, number one, is data. They need data, and the behavior and the prompts that people actually use and the information, it feeds the beast, I'd say, right? So it feeds the language models, and everything that every single human in the planet does on ChatGPT goes back to their database, and it's used to improve the algorithm. So with that said, if you're inside of a company's environment, you should not, I'd say, use it. Or if you do, there has to be some clarity and some very important rules to be followed. Number one, never use personal data, right? Never put your name, phone, address, nothing, because you don't know where that information is going to end up going. Second thing, privacy of data. Do not share company-specific information through ChatGPT if your company has not blocked ChatGPT from the corporate domains, right? You cannot put customer data. You cannot put anything that's related to your product and services. Why? Because again, the data goes into OpenAI's data lake, and it's used to train the models. So by typing company-specific information, you're likely violating a lot of policies and procedures that if your company, again, does not have something clear that prohibits that, be careful. And I think one of the important things to say, and that's where the comparison with IBM Watson helps us understand what you should do in the enterprise and corporate space, is IBM has a more transparent model. And it's normal because it's more mature. Yeah, IBM has been doing this as a solution for large companies for a long, long time. There are some very transparent models that can be trained, personalized for every single company, for every single industry. Healthcare is one of the industry that has been benefiting from IBM Watson's capabilities for quite some time, and with very successful applications. Now, besides the transparency that IBM Watson brings to companies, I think one of the most important thing is what we call data retrieval, right? Think about the following situation. Think about you're part of a community that is working to put a massive grand puzzle together. And every person in this community would contribute to that grand puzzle with a piece of the puzzle, which represents information, knowledge, and everything that this person has learned throughout his life. So if one of your friends, George, for example, he comes and put one of those pieces and it fits smoothly around all the other pieces of the puzzle, and later, if George decides to remove that piece of the puzzle, bring back or take it back in terms of information, knowledge, whatever that piece of puzzle represents, he cannot do that in the ChatGPT space. In other words, let's say if you mistakenly type something that is related to a large deal that your company is working on, could be a merger and an acquisition. If you type it there, for example, let's say to help you prepare a presentation, that information about the acquisition goes into the OpenAI database, and you cannot bring it back. Like you can't say, hey, delete this thing from your database, like give it back to me. You can't retrieve that data. And to me, that's one of the most important things when you think about what to do in terms of security in the corporate space. Now, how can I actually benefit from ChatGPT? Well, I think the straight answer is ChatGPT is owned by OpenAI once again. And one of the largest, I'd say, investors in OpenAI is Microsoft. Microsoft has poured a ton of billions of dollars to fund OpenAI. And as a result, Microsoft has a front row seat in terms of leveraging OpenAI's capabilities within its Azure cloud ecosystem. And Azure has one instance where you can keep your data private, right? So the data that your company has is private, and you can create and start to put your own models there, and your data is not going to necessarily get mixed with the rest of the models and the way the Open ChatGPT actually does. That's one thing. But the most important point is for every one of you, go deeper and understand what the policy is, right? It's like companies are very good. Most of companies now, they have what we call a role CISO, right? So the Chief Security Information Officer. And ideally, there has been a mandate that stops ChatGPT from working inside of the corporate space. But if this is not the case, do the job yourself, right? Be careful. Do not use it for company specific purposes. You use in your house, in your own computer, in your own cell phone, because you could be exposing your company, you could be exposing yourself, and you could be exposing a lot of people. Now, be aware of the policies, be aware of what your company is actually trying to say, or what's the recommendation, right? Like before this whole hype around AI with ChatGPT, certainly companies had policies around what to do with your communication through social media. For example, you can't go on social media and start talking about specific information in your company without approval. It's very important the way you communicate. It's very important what you say publicly. And companies matured a lot in terms of what the rules should be, or the policies should look like to guide people. It's actually important for people to be out there. Now, I think AI is a whole new thing and is still maturing. Make sure that you understand what those are. And if your company does not have a clear policy yet, understand those things, the best practices yourself. Don't put your personal data. Do not put any specific information that belongs to your company, your customers, because it could be a serious thing in terms of violating policies, and you don't want to risk, despite the amazing capability that ChatGPT has. Now, if you're in a position to decide what to do, clearly you have a bunch of alternatives. And IBM Watson, in my opinion, given the maturity, the credibility the company has, and the time that Watson has been running already with very, very robust security behind, very transparent policies, I think this is your one-stop shop, right? So many other companies who have powerful language models are still very young. And I think there is always a risk betting on very young nascent technologies, but the upside could be higher. The important thing here is be aware of the risk, put security front and center. And that should be even more important than the hype and how fast you want to go and adopt some of these technologies. Because if you jump too fast, you have the risk of exposing. But if you're too slow, you miss the wave and your company becomes irrelevant. At the end of the day, the most important word here is balance.